Yeah, I want to explain this because it's probably not explained anywhere on YouTube. When you put the timing cover on with the engine installed in the car and the oil pan on, what you're going to have a problem with is the rubber gasket that goes along the bottom to get it on over the pan. Now, how do you do that with the pan installed? Well, what you have to do is you loosen the first 4 bolts on each side of the pan. And what I do before I loosen those first 4 bolts, I chemically clean where the pan is joined to the block, so I'm not getting any grit in between the gasket, because I'm planning to just re-bolt it up. And I put a couple screwdrivers, just enough to bring it down, maybe I don't know, maybe a 1/16 of an inch or something like that. It's a very slight bend in the pan, it's not distorting it, and that's enough that you can get this over this timing cover over the front of the oil pan lip with that rubber gasket in place. But there's more tricks to it than that. What you want to do is you want to glue the rubber gasket to the timing cover itself. Glue it, not RTV it, but use I don't have it out here right now, but weather strip adhesive. And after you do that, you want to put, just like, in other words, the pan, the gasket is, the U-shaped thing. You want to put some grease on the oil pan itself, lip, but not in the corners. No, keep away from the corners. Keep a good 1.5 inches away from the corners, because that's where you want it sealed. Just maybe about 2/3 of this part on the oil pan, and also on that rubber gasket that's on the bottom of the timing cover. Put some grease, because that'll help slide it over. Then use lots of RTV, and the RTV, actually I put, I didn't have to do this, but I put RTV on the block, then I put the gasket on to hold it in place, then I put RTV on the timing cover, and then I put a lot of RTV in a corner, especially where that rubber gasket meets the paper gasket, where the oil pan is bolted to the block. In that corner, you want a lot of RTV. And what I did was, I got one of these pins in place. I started a couple bolts here, and then I took a piece of wood, and as I got some of these bolts in place up here on the top, I tapped this right here, with a piece of wood and a hammer, and just tapped it over place, and then tightened all the bolts a little bit at a time. If you have the grease on there, the grease on the rubber gasket and on the oil pan lip, and the oil pan is moved down just a hair by loosening 4 bolts on each side of the oil pan, putting a little screwdriver in here. Don't put the screwdriver in, do it from the outside. Just do it a very little bit, because you only need about a 1/16 of an inch. And chemically clean around where the pan meets the block before you loosen up those bolts. It should seal up again, unless you got a really bad gasket or something. But even so, what I could do is I could inject a little bit of RTV in there before I tighten it up, and there's that little bit of gap, and that'll seal it up too. But this is how you get this timing cover on without taking the entire oil pan off, because I noticed they'll never explain this trick, and I always hated this about doing the Chevys versus the Mopars. The Mopars are way freaking easier. Was getting this timing cover back on without bending nothing or anything like that. And like I said, you just got to go easy. It's just give it a hair bit of room by loosening the first 4 bolts on the oil pan on each side, but make sure you clean everything before you loosen those bolts. Don't bend the pan down a lot, just get a little bit of a flex, maybe a 1/16 of an inch, that's all you need. Actually take some glue, weather strip adhesive, and glue the rubber gasket to the timing cover. After that dries, then use a little bit of grease, but not on the rubber gasket, but not on the corners of the rubber gasket where it meets the oil pan. You want RTV in there, but you just want a little grease on the lip of the pan and that rubber gasket, so it'll slide over there. So that sucker's in there. And it was easy. It wasn't hard to do. The hardest part was waiting for the weather strip adhesive to dry. You know, it went on nice. There was no problems getting it on. It's like I had to do it a little at a time. I had to get, I had to start the bolts up there on the top. I had this one pin on the side here. Started getting the bolts in. Then this pin was started coming through a little bit. Then I took, I don't know, it was a block of wood around here someplace, and I put a piece of cloth over it so I don't scratch my paint. I just put a block of wood right here, just tapped this real gently, start doing the screws a little bit more, tapped it real gently, and with the pan being lowered maybe a 1/16 of an inch and a little bit of grease on that rubber gasket. Like, again, you don't want the grease on the rubber gasket where it meets the corner here. You want it just maybe this 2/3 where it meets the oil pan lip. Slid right on. So most times people have problems with that, and they usually have to take the oil pan off, and that might involve taking some suspension parts out or some bullshit like that, and you don't have to do that. So I just want to point that out, okay? And it's a little tip that I don't think it's posted anywhere. Probably not. Because, most people, they'll just tell you, here's putting the oil pan on, the timing cover on, and putting the oil pan on when the engine's out of the car. It's real easy to put. Oh, and putting the seal on, it's not hard. You can, you don't need a special tool for that, putting that seal in there. I just used a big socket, and I had a block of wood on the opposite side over here, and I used a big socket and I just tapped it with and I had some grease on there, and the seal went right on there, no problem. It's not hard to do. There are no special tools involved. So, at least I don't really have a lot of special tools. I mean, so you can. There's a lot of ways to get away around all that stuff. So, just read up post this. It's pretty, just MacGyver type tricks. They're, I don't know, they're Cooter's garage tricks, if you want to say that. Maybe that's something Cooter would do, right? Oh, hey there, Boots the Rebel Cat. I'm glad you stopped by. So, he's always out here helping me. Give him some Temptations treats. Yeah. Anyway, he's a good old boy, right? You my friend, ain't you? Yeah, he is.